Let me introduce my sensei, Hanshi Toney. And Hanshi Toney gonna tell a little bit about his life in martial arts. He's 80 years old and over 70 years he was doing judo and jiu-jitsu. So Hanshi Toney, please tell us when you were born.
I was born July the 11th, 1932.
Where?
In Pine Bluff, Arkansas. It's a little bitty place. It's 55 miles north of Little Rock, if anybody cares.
Where? Do you have brothers and sisters?
I have one sister who has passed, but that's another.
So you were the only
only boy.
How did you start it in martial arts?
Well, it's really not a fun story, but it's a true story. I was playing on the schoolyard when I was 10 years old, and 3 high school boys started picking on me, and they beat me up very bad. And I vowed to myself I would find a way to get even. So I wandered all over this little town that I lived in Texas, and I'm walking down the street and I see this open garage, and there's a gentleman in there with one of these funny suits on, and he was teaching young people martial arts, which was ju-jutsu at that time.
What year was it?
That was in the 42, 43, about 1943, 44. He was retired Marine Corps. And they call the art then combat jiu-jitsu, as we do today. And he had retired from the service and devoted his time to teaching. And I trained with him for about 8 or 9 years. Competed in judo after World War II.
What was the name? Do you remember his name?
His name was Dr. Alan Smith. And he was in a little town in Texas called Longview.
Okay.
And I trained with him. He was excellent because all he taught was combat, you know, how to defend yourself. And then the judo started coming in after the war, and I got locked into that. Competed all my young life. Made Shodan when I was 19 years old. And then I went to Japan in the 50s during Korean War. And while I was there, I trained with some of the most wonderful teachers in the world. But they took my black belt away from me.
Before we talk about Japan, you were in the military, or you were just...
Well, first, when I went to Japan, I was in the military. But when I
Which branch?
I was in the United States Air Force, but when I went in, it was the Army Air Force.
Okay.
And we got, my flight, we got the first blue uniforms and the last hardcore military boot camp. Now all they do is march.
Yeah.
But we went through all the combat training and crawling under the live bullets and that.
So when you went to Japan, you were part of the Air Force?
I was, my first trip.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I was in the Air Force. I was a senior firefighter, crash and rescue, and my job was to hit the wing of the jet fighter, blow the canopy, and get the pilot out, no matter what. So we did a couple of them.
Okay. So when you went to Japan, you knew what you want. You knew what to look for.
Yes. And I was so fortunate because there was a group of people there. They were training at the Kodokan, and they had an opportunity to study with Kyuzo Mifune. And how I got in that class, I'll never know, but that was the happiest day of my life, because I actually got to touch his gi and work with him. And he was Kano's protege, and Jigoro Kano was our founder. And I worked with him for 2 weeks. I have been back since 10 times. And
But then back 10 times to Kodokan.
Yeah. Well, other cities
schools,
and other schools, because they're in every mountain city there's a dojo and an old sensei there who has a wife who's usually his uke.
Sure.
What kind of
So you have, besides Mufuni, who else did you meet?
Oh, Shinohara, who's still with us, thank God. A gentleman by the name of Nakabayashi, Saito, all the great names were all still on. And I got to have the opportunity to participate in their classes, their kikos, and learned so much because they strip you if you come over there a black belt at a young age. They don't do that today, but then you're white belt until they decide that you're ready to be Shodan. I was tested for Shodan for over a week. Had to do all the katas, had to do all the chokes, all the arm bars, all the standing 40 throw. And well, it's 65 now. But there was the Goku no Waza and then what they call the Shinishiho, which made actually 65. So then they watch you like, it was wonderful, wonderful. It's hard to get training like that today unless you go to Japan or Russia. They train that in Russia, as you will.
Did you have a chance in those years, the early 50s, to cross with Hal Sharp at the time?
Oh, Hal, yeah.
So you had a chance to cross with him at that time?
Well, he was there. I met him. Gene Liddell was there also, and I met Gene. I met Gene right after he came over. He had won the senior nationals in this country for the second time, and he participated in a tournament that I participated in. And he went, it was Kohaku, and he went 27 rounds and beat everybody. Took 2 days. But Gene's a bad boy. I love him to death. And Hal was the only American that had ever coached a Japanese team in the Kodokan. And Hal's still very sharp today. He remembers everybody that I do.
So what happens next? After you travel, come back to Japan about 10 times, traveling, learning from different schools, what did you do next?
Well, I got out of service in '54, and I didn't start teaching right away. I went to several dojos throughout the country. At that point in time, Sensei, I was in show business, and I used to sing and dance in nightclubs and on the musical comedy stage. And whenever I traveled, I had my wardrobe in one hand and my judo gi in the other. So I got to go a lot of places and study with a lot of people, from New York back to San Francisco. And so many wonderful teachers we had in those days. We still got wonderful teachers today, but in those days it was you go in a place that was like Tenri Dojo out here was the place to go. You die when you walk out the door because they kill you. But I competed. I won a lot of tournaments. I didn't do, well, I competed in nationals several times, but I won the national championship in 1998. I won a bronze medal.
In the nationals
team. And prior to that, I competed in the Worlds in Canada in 98, 99, and I took a gold and silver.
In the Masters division?
Master division, yes.
It was a Judo Masters division?
Yes. Okay. Which is, still, there's an organization in Canada, and that's all they do is Masters throughout the world. And they, matter of fact, their last tournament they had for World Masters was in the Kodokan in Japan. So, but the competition, I started teaching, and I've trained a lot of people. I've been trained, had my fingers on Jim Woolley, who was a two-time Olympian, Billy Sanford, knew Chuck Norris quite well, who started in judo, got hurt and went into karate and made a fortune.
So Chuck Norris started, his first art was judo?
Yeah, and that was in Korea, and he got hurt in training, and the dojo was upstairs, and downstairs they were doing karate, so he went downstairs, and then he started his own system. And Chuck is his 10th degree in that now, but I was his 8th degree promotion at UCLA in California. Nice man, Chuck Norris, and tough.
Who else did you get a chance to meet over the years?
Oh, well, I said Gene LaBelle and Chuck. I met Frank, what was his name? He was at the last place we were, Frank
Dukes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Frank was a very nice man, wonderful martial artist. And Neil Olenkamp and Gene, there's so many. Mm-hmm. I'm terrible with names. I only remember my Japanese. One of my early teachers was a gentleman by the name of Tai Watanabe, who was an All Japan champion. He wrote a book on his favorite throw, which we call Marote Serenagi, double hand cross.
Yeah.
He did a whole book like this on his technique, and you couldn't throw him with it. It's a funny story. I was working out with my sensei one day, and we got to this part of the day when we do randori, which is free fight. And I'm working with him, and I slipped him into his throat, and I started to deal the throw. And as he's coming over, he chokes me out, and I'm on the floor, and he said, "Tony, get up!" True story. He choked me out on the floor. But there's so many. We finally, this year, in the Olympics, took our very first gold medal, which the young lady that won did a beautiful job. And that's the first time since 1964.
Wow.
But the reason for that is the other reason that the Russians excel and the Japanese excel, because all of their people that compete, they train all the time. They don't do anything else. Their government supports them. We don't have that here. Our kids have to get up, go to school, go to work, and try to get 3 or 4 hours a week in, and they have no financial backing. Except at the Olympic Training Center, I think they make like $700 a month, which is nothing to try to live on.
Yeah.
And these days.
Did you have the chance to meet Sensei Ishikawa when you were in Japan?
Ishikawa, yes.
Yeah. What is your experience when you met him?
Well, it was just, I mean, he was in a session that I went to, and he introduced her, but I didn't get to spend a lot of time with him. I spent more time with Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee was a wonderful martial artist. Did more for martial arts in the United States than practically anybody. He and Carradine, which Carradine beat him out of doing the show here. He was supposed to do that, but they put it on that mark. But still, in the United States, our people don't know about judo. They know about jiu-jitsu because of the professionalism that they're doing now in the UFC and that kind of thing. But they're wonderful arts, and they're so good for children.
When you were a performer, what kind of performance, what kind of dancing did you do?
I used to sing, and I did.
Used to sing?
Yeah. I did. I studied ballet for years and years and years, but I never got the strong turnout that dancers need to get that full split. So I did mostly American jazz, tap, a little bit of ballet, ballroom dancing, but I did one Broadway show, a show called A Day in the Life of just about everyone. We opened and they closed us in 7 days. But the show was good. We played it off Broadway for about 4 months, took it back to Houston, Texas, but the critics didn't like the author. And so they panned the show.
So for how many years did you travel and did shows?
My whole life.
All your life?
So
you were a showman?
Yes, that was my
profession.
And then I danced and I taught. I had my own schools in Texas. And I didn't have any Olympians in that, but I had some pretty good throws. But it's amazing because there's not anything that we do in our judo and a lot of our jiu-jitsu that I can't show you a dance move. And it's amazing. Somebody was going to do a throw that we call Uchimata, which is in the fire reap. And it was a young lady who had been a dancer, and I told her, I said, do a chasse coupe in a high attitude. She had it. And she's still playing judo.
Interesting, very interesting. What's the bright moments of your life you can remember and you want to share?
The brightest moment was to meet and train with Mifune. When he shook my hand, I thought I should never wash my hands again.
Really?
He was so phenomenal, especially when I trained with him. He was in his 80s, which was a short time before he passed. And I mean, he's all over the place. You can't believe how quick this man was. I got into a situation where I got to randori with him for a few moments. And I slipped in behind me like I was going to throw him, and he jumped over and stood in front of me and said, "Tayo Toshi," then he threw me.
Wow. We forgot to mention that everybody in America called Philip Porter the father of American Judo, but very few people knew that he was your first Judo student.
Well, he was one of, not my first,
but one of the students.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to teach Phil for quite some time. I met him in service, and we were both in armed forces Judo. And yeah, I taught him a few things, and he always used to tell me, he says, "Tony, you're more Japanese than Japanese." he asked me about a throw once in a clinic. A throw called Ashiguruma, and I'm walking through the dojo, and he's teaching some people, and he said, "Raven-san," he said, "tell me very shortly about Ashiguruma." I said, "It's the same thing as Ishiguruma usually," and he says, "I rest my case." But Phil was wonderful. He did more for judo in this country than anybody, and he was not liked by too many people, but everybody went to him. There's so many people in the United States that are wearing red and white belts from the Rokudan up to 8th that came from Phil Porter. But if there was a technique that he was not sure of, he's on the phone to Japan, sending me all the literature.
You're 80 years old, and you look like in a very good physical shape, and you look good. You move around. It's amazing. I remember 4 years ago when we went to Russia, you were actually teaching the techniques. You were on tatami, so that's amazing. You know.
How do we get back?
So it would be nice when we go next year, and you will be on tatami and show young kids something.
I can still mock it.
What's the secret of your health and longevity?
Well, that's really, I'm glad you asked that question, because my doctors, see, I have a condition called atrial fibrillation, which is a rapid beating of the heart. Been in the hospital for 2 or 3 times, but they always bring me back to rhythm. Last time I had to do an electronic, put you to sleep and you're back. And my doctor tells me, if it were not for your martial arts, you would be alive. Because it stimulates the heart and keeps the vessels and the joints working. And I try to eat right, and no fatty foods and that kind of thing. And take my vitamins and my 4 pills a day for my heart. So I'm good.
Okay. So this is Hanshi Toney, who is 80 years old, in a very good physical health and shape, who is still practicing and teaching judo and jiu-jitsu at the Pasadena Judo Club, right?
Well, I teach there, but I'm teaching it at a couple other places, the Japanese cultural centers.
Japanese cultural centers.
Yeah.
And you've been doing judo and jiu-jitsu for 70 years.
70 years.
Amazing. How is it important about the spirit, martial arts spirit, or spirit in general? How is it important for martial arts?
It's important to know the spirit in order to even do it properly, because so many people leave things out that should be done. The respect and the humility and the honor, it's just so important, and that you train and you learn the language of the art and all of the techniques. Because some people say, well, I'm not going to do kata. You need to do kata. It's very, very important, because it teaches you how to play the sport. But it's so important that the rules and the regulations are followed. And some of the rules are going to be changed too, because they messed up with this thing.
For you, what the dojo means and represents?
Dojo means a hall of practice, but it's a sacred place, and it's where there's so many so many secrets that dwell. Someone told me sometime, they said, Hanshi, I guess you know everything that there is in judo, jiu-jitsu. And I said, no. I said, if you took all of those techniques and all those good waza and put them in this room, I would still be standing in the corner because I have all this to learn. It's never ending. Never, never ending. It's good. That's why you're so good. You know everything.
No.
You're close.
No, still working. What do you think changed over the years in martial arts? Is it changed for the worse or for the better over the years?
That's a rough question, because some places it's worse, because people have forgotten about the spirit that Kanin calls which means maximum efficiency with minimum effort to overcome any opponent, but mutual welfare and benefit towards mankind. And some people have forgotten those things, and they just go ahead and they start up their own associations and promote themselves. That really is worthless. But the good things is we have young people that in jiu-jitsu and judo that are doing absolutely impossible things on the mats and in competition. It's amazing what some of these kids can take what you teach them and turn it into their own and really fly with it. It excites me. And I'm not all about it.
Any funny moments you can remember in your life while you were practicing martial arts?
Any
funny, some funny situation.
Oh, well, like when my sensei threw me and choked me out and they said, "Get up, Tony," I was dead asleep. But I was refereeing a tournament one time, and there was a young black student who was excellent, and he was fighting one of our local champions, and he was choked out. And I called the Ippon, and then I went over to revive him with the art that we call couple. And he woke up and I said, "Are you okay?" He said, "Yes, sir." I said, "Do you know where you are?" And he said, "Yes, sir." "You're at the tournament?" "Yeah." "You know you just got choked out?" "Yeah, I know." So I said, "Okay." So I checked him, see if he was all right. He laid back down on the mat. It was fun.
How do you control the fear in martial arts? Internal fear, sometimes we have...
Through training.
Through training.
You have to just jump in the water, get wet. It's like riding a horse, which my granddaughter does, and she's a champion. But if you're thrown off or you fall off, you have to get up and get back on, because otherwise you never ride a horse again. And it's the same way in martial arts. Most everybody, when they're young and they start, and you start them into falling, which is the first thing you learn and most important. But when they start being thrown, they'll say, "Don't throw me so hard. Don't throw me hard." Well, you have to be thrown hard, because the break fall, the ukemi that we do, you don't feel anything. It's like a massage.
What can you tell us the difference between a man or a woman in martial arts?
Well, that's a good one too. Today, in international competition, more medals are won by women in judo. Now, I don't know about the other martial arts, but in judo, women seem to excel because of their flexibility and they're more loose and more relaxed than most men. Of course, there's some tough guys out there too, but they're really, I see coming in the next few years, co-ed.
You think
men against women?
In judo?
They do it on the dojo.
Yeah, in the dojo,
They do it, and they throw these boys all over the place. There's another funny story where we had a young man come up to Colorado Springs to the Judo Institute up there, and he wanted to work with somebody in particular, but they were in the dojo at that time. But I told him, I said that the girls are training today for a couple hours. He said, "Oh, I don't want to work with girls." I said, "They give you time." So he stayed and trained with the girls, and when class was over, he crawled out the door because they choked him out. They did our bars, they threw him all over. But this was our national team.
Yes.
These kids are good. They have no fear. all of the kids in martial arts that compete, especially internationally, they have no fear of anything that they do, and they'll try anything. And they're honest, and they try to play clean and not hurt anybody.
From this moment, you're part of the very few people in the world called AGF Legends. So this is an AGF Legend award.
Come on.
Also would like to mention that the belt that you give me, your belt,
yes,
I always wear it daily, every day. And I'm very honored to receive it from you, and I'm gonna wear it for the rest of my life. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
I'm very honored and happy to have you as my teacher, as my sensei, as my mentor and friend.
Thank you.
And every time we talk, you know, maybe I'm getting older, but I'm listening to your words from a different angle, and I start more appreciating what you're saying. So, and every time you say something, I'm learning something. So I highly appreciate and honored you for being my mentor, my teacher, and my friend.
Well, let me tell you something, Alexey. I saw you when we did this last seminar over at Kalima, and you taught a very short seminar, but it was so beautifully done. I was so impressed, and I still about it. It was really, really good, because you have tried and you worked so hard your whole life on your martial arts, and you've done more with your martial arts, my friend, than most people would ever do in a lifetime. And you have excelled, and you are a true master.
Thank you.
And I congratulate you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And just to be a little part of it is an honor.
Thank you. Thank you.